Hi, folks. Welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. Today, I want to take a look at a paper which tries to come up with a set of questions that can tell programmers apart from non programmers. Now, this sounded interesting to me by itself, but there is a concrete use case behind it. A lot of empirical software engineering research studies will want to recruit participants online and give those participants some kinds of questions or challenges or exercises. And when they do that, they want to recruit people with programming skills. And since often there is some kind of monetary compensation for participating in these studies, you will find non-programmers trying to get into these studies. So you want to tell programmers apart from non-programmers by giving them some sort of initial set of questions to filter in only the programmers. Before we take a look at the questions themselves, let's quickly look at their methodology. They designed 16 questions of different types that ask about different aspects of programming. And they tested it with known groups of people. People that had a programming background as well as people that were known not to have a programming background. And that tells you something, but then you also have to test these questions in an adversarial environment. If a non-programmer tried to do these questions, would they be able to answer it? And so they did test them in an adversarial environment where they offered these questions to non-programmers and also offered them a monetary incentive to answer these questions. And after all these rounds of filtering, they've come up with a set of questions that they believe can tell programmers apart from non-programmers. All right, so these were their initial 16 questions. And as you can see, they come in a bunch of different categories. There's one question which asks, what websites do you most frequently use? Apparently, programmers would say things like Stack Overflow. There's another few questions that ask very basic programming related questions, like what is a compiler, what is a recursive function, and so on. What values can a Boolean take on? There's another few that talk about number formats, so converting a number between decimal and binary, or picking out valid hexadecimal numbers. And then we have what you might call debugging kinds of questions, like this one, which asks you what might have gone wrong with the program, or another one which gives you a snippet of code and asks you about its runtime. And there's some code comprehension questions, some dry run questions, which ask you what the final value emitted by a piece of code is going to be. So there's 16 such questions that they started their testing with. Before I get on to the results, which tell us which of these questions actually worked, I'd encourage you to pause here for a minute and try to guess which of these questions would have the most differentiating power. And here are the results. You can see what fraction of people in each group, the programming group as well as the non-programming group, got each question correct. Now, of course, we're looking for questions that programmers get right, but that non-programmers almost always get wrong. And this is their final recommendation. They recommend a few questions with a time limit of either half a minute or a minute, and then a couple of questions with no time limit. So coming back to our table of all questions, the ones they recommended with a time limit were 2, 3, 4, and 6. And those are very basic knowledge questions, things like what's a compiler, what's a recursive function, and so on. And then the two harder ones that they recommended without time limits were about answering questions given a code snippet, like what is the parameter of this function, or select the returned value of a piece of pseudocode. But overall, what the authors found was that the most effective questions, even though they tend to take the most time to answer, were the code comprehension questions. And those were the ones that could really tell apart programmers from non-programmers, which is not a very surprising result, but it's good to see this empirically validated. So that was a quick look at a paper that tries to come up with a set of questions to select for programmers. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Thank you very much.